Thank you for that introduction. I'm glad to be here with you today through the power of technology and get to be here in Palmer, Alaska, presenting thousands of miles away. And my name is Cody Buse, and I'm working on my master's in natural resources and emphasis in agroforestry. And the project that I'm doing for that is titled Agroforestry Education for Cold Climates, Curriculum Development, and Teaching Seminar Evaluation. So we'll kind of dig into why did I choose this study? What are the what's the need for it? And if we look at here, this is a USDA plant hardiness zone map, and we've got the northeast of the country, the upper Midwest, northern Great Plains, Intermountain West, and Alaska, which I should mention, it's always often floating off to the side in these maps, and it's about a fifth of the size of the continental or contiguous United States, and so it makes up a large portion of what, for the purposes of this study, we consider a cold climate. And the definition that was used is zone 5 and below. And these areas can get in zone 5 negative 15 degrees Fahrenheit, or negative 15 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit, all the way up to negative 60. And so these areas are fairly extreme, and sometimes plants and animals and agriculture, they have to be very adaptable to do well in these areas. And so reason one, I guess you could say, is that there's a large portion of the United States that's engaged in agriculture that deals with cold climates. And then if we continue on, we've got some pictures here, and they just kind of highlight some unique aspects of cold climate agriculture. We've got some muskox being raised up here in this picture, and then down below is actually a barley field in Delta Junction, Alaska. And these areas, although they're not, they do produce a significant amount of product. They don't always receive all the attention that maybe they need to be successful, especially when introducing something new practices such as agroforestry. And so they really the need is great for information that's specific to their needs. And that brings us to, I guess, this part of the need is a lot of young people, high school age secondary students, are involved in some type of agriculture education, science education, environmental science, and they're really going to be the ones who will be the landowners, who will be the agricultural producers, and they'll be learning about agroforestry. And so I wanted to mention Hannah Hemmelgarn's work, and she developed with the Center for Agroforestry a high school curriculum geared towards that can be used by teachers who teach those subjects. And I can't say enough good things about it. It really, for me, it laid the complete groundwork for me to add emphasis on cold climates. Now I highlighted a specific slide from one parts of that curriculum, and here we've got the distribution of the pawpaw tree, and you can see the areas that we highlighted as cold climate. It wouldn't thrive there, and so it's been excluded. Now, not every tree that was in this specific slideshow was like this, but a lot were. And so when I saw that, I thought, I could really add on to the knowledge that we have here and help students who are in cold climate areas to adapt agroforestry to their specific circumstances. And that's really the needs and why I've done this project. And I should mention that the project is the development of curriculum that's specific to cold climates. So let's take a look at what that is, and I highly recommend that if you get a chance, the Center for Agroforestry's website has the high school curriculum there, and it's terrific. That's really what led to this. And so we have the Agroforestry for cold climates curriculum, and split it up into 2 units. The units are a week long each, and Unit 1 is simply going over some agroforestry practices, and Unit 2 is focusing on those practices in cold climates. And the reason for that being is that you lay the groundwork for understanding what agroforestry is, and then you can now move on to understanding it for your local condition. I've added this picture of our local area where you have this mountain's Pioneer Peak, and just emphasize that in these cold climates, agriculture is viable, it is happening, and so we just need to adapt agroforestry, or at least get the youth involved in understanding agroforestry for cold climates. So Unit 1, apologize for the poor picture, but I just had to include it because I felt like it really summed up what Unit 1 is about, and that's introducing these agroforestry practices like alley cropping, forest farming, riparian forest buffers, silvopasture, and windbreaks. And so that's what Unit 1 covers. Each day is something different. They usually have a presentation in them. If they don't have a presentation, they might have a reading, and they typically have guided notes, and that's for a small part of the lesson. They all include an experiential learning activity, something hands-on that shows at least the attainment, not necessarily the mastery, but the attainment of the knowledge that we want them to understand about an agroforestry practice. I added in here that it's Google Classroom compatible. As an educator myself, I can't tell you how nice it is to use something like Google Classroom if I have access to computers. I don't have to make printouts. I can grade everything online, put feedback on there. And so anyway, this curriculum is able to use through programs such as Google Classroom, or to be printed out. And it is standards based, meaning there are standards that need to be met, such as Common Core science standards, next generation science standards, and these help teachers take this directly into the classroom. They don't need to necessarily create anything new. As a teacher, you need to make sure that you're hitting the standards. And so if you're going to create something for your classroom or use something, it needs to be standards based, and that's why we've done that for this curriculum. There's lesson plans, and then there's student and teacher items, and these are all available to the teacher in different folders. So this can be in computer file folders or on a system like Google Drive. So that kind of sums up the agroforestry practices. We're going to spend more time on the cold climate unit 2. And here we've got a picture of Rhodiola rosea, which is a plant that's found in Siberia and parts of Russia, and in other spots, but there it's being harvested, and it's used as a herbal medicine or an adaptogen. And anyway, it's a very hardy plant, so we've included it in here. We'll talk a little bit more about it and why that's important. But here are the objectives for this lesson. One being define what hardiness zones are, and figure out what plants survive in the local area, and that's key to at least understanding what's going to survive here. Maybe not thrive, but at least survive. So then we talk about frost-free dates and explore plant species limitations for the local area. And we do this because things may survive, but they might not thrive. Apricot trees, peaches are very prone to being frostbitten in the spring, and then or they just never receive the summer heat to develop fruit. So helping students understand this is really critical for cold climates. And then lastly, they design an agroforestry system with a plant hardness zone of 2 to 4 within the local frost-free dates. So they take all the knowledge that they had and now they design some type of system based around that. And we'll just keep moving on to the second part, the second day of the Unit 2, and that's plant acclimation, which is we're talking about how do plants get ready for winter? How do they go dormant? How do they survive? We got some spruce, black spruce trees in the picture here, and they have to survive some brutal temperatures. And how do they do that? How do they get ready for that? So first we describe the process of acclimation, its importance to cold climates. That understanding is crucial. And then we explore provenance, and its effect on plant hardness. So we're talking about if these students see blueberries in a catalog from a nursery in Florida that's been growing them in Florida for many years and different generations of plants. Those blueberries are probably not going to be hardy to a zone 2 area because of the changes that happens within them and within the succeeding generations. So that's really important to understand because if you're bringing in new plants from this area or from out of state or out of area. And then they need to present factors necessary to achieve plant hardiness. And a lot of these are just hands-on activities. I think this one is, in particular, is a presentation. So they need to understand how does a plant get ready for dormancy, where they should get the plants from. I know, especially here in Alaska, we don't have a lot of local suppliers, so we need to look for plants that come from typically another cold climate. So then we have day 3 of Unit 2, and that is soil and site selection. Here we've got a picture where we've got a body of water and then a mountain. So we talk a lot about with microclimates with the students, and then if you have a body of water, it kind of tempers the area. It keeps it from getting too hot in the summer and then too cold in the winter, and then if you're on the north side of the mountain, you're going to be a little bit colder and maybe even drier. And if you're on the south side of the slope, you're going to receive the warmth. And so these understandings of microclimates are really critical. If you're going to push the boundaries a little bit with your trees, you need to make sure that you understand these factors that could go into either your success or failure. And lastly, they present some soil warming techniques and understanding of site orientation. In cold climates, they can sometimes deal with permafrost, which is that layer of frozen ground underneath the soil. Many times the soil is not doesn't get warm enough for certain activities to happen, and understanding that if you use fertilizers, they don't always behave in the way that you would expect in a colder soil. They may last longer than intended, and this is especially important if you use things such as pesticides or herbicides. They're going to react differently in cold soils. So we go over all those factors because, again, they're unique to cold climates and they play a role in a success or failure of an operation. We have livestock for cold climates, and this is geared towards silver pasture. We have some reindeer in the picture here, and they're a domestic species that is used in different parts of the United States, but also all over the world. So we identify traditional breeds of livestock that are used for cold climates. And they do a little research on their end about breeds of cattle and goat, sheep. They go pretty depth into that, And then we look at some non-traditional such as reindeer, muskox, some of the what would be considered maybe wild game species, some of the non-traditional things that might serve a niche market and still fit into some type of silvopasture operation. And they also make a model as a part of that, combining what they know about plants now and what they know about animal species. So they combine those two things to create a silvopasture model. All right, and now we have marketing. So marketing is important because in cold climates, you can see a lot of the disadvantages, but then there's also advantages. One being these areas can be seen as wild or having some type of special value or significance. So anyway, marketing is crucial to a cold climate operation. Here we have two pictures of, we've got some Alaska birch syrup and then some peonies down in, it looks like Homer, Alaska. So we've got the ocean and the bay down below. And peonies, at least in this cold climate, they bloom at a time that's hard to come by for most of the country, and so there's a niche market there that's been identified. So students start out by identifying advantages of products derived from cold climates. We look at some specific cases such as peonies, rhodiola, rosé that we talked about or mentioned earlier, and some of these niche products that do well in cold climates. And then we explore some common and potential products for cold climates. So they do a little bit of research in this, guided by the teacher who has some reference notes for that. And then they create a marketing campaign to support a cold climate product. And this actually takes the form of a banner. For Unit 1, going back just a little bit, a lot of those projects are creating a model, and they develop a windbreak model, and they test it with a fan. And a lot of these are very low tech. It doesn't take a lot of extra things by the teacher to create a hands-on experience. And that actually rounds out Unit 2, the cold climates. So what's the future of this project? Is it completed? No, it's not done yet. The final thing that we need to do, or that I need to do, is we're having our teacher seminar where I'll present the information and then receive a review. Not necessarily on my teaching abilities, but on the content. And that feedback is really vital into finalizing the project and making sure that it's ready to be used. So still we'll go through a final review and revision through the feedback of other teachers, and that will happen here at the end of the month of March, which is pretty soon. And just making the material available, making sure that people know about it. And I think with that, the fact that it's both hard copy and available on programs such as Google Classroom helps with that. And the last thing is the development of a teacher handbook, which is being in the process of being finished, but it takes a lot of the information that the lesson plans and all the additional materials that the teachers have access to, the slideshow, the guided notes, the answer keys, the activity guides, and it puts them all into one place that's kind of a quick reference. So if a teacher needs to know more about a certain agroforestry product practice, or more specifically cold climate conditions, they can look it up there. Wanted to acknowledge my graduate advisor, Dr. Christine Lee, for all of her help and guidance, and overall just letting me proceed in this process in a way that has provided me with a lot of growth. And big thank you to the Center of Agroforestry, Hannah Hemmelgarn, for her work. It really laid the groundwork for the rest of this and made it possible. Without the development of that high school curriculum, I couldn't expand on it into cold climates. So I really appreciate that. And then the Alaska FFA Association, they're helping me meet with all the teachers and to have that final review where we can make revisions. So I appreciate them. And it looks like it's now time for questions, and I appreciate you all listening.